Hello, and welcome to the West Ham Breakdown with me, Jack Elderton, and my mate Callum Goodall, in a week where, well, I mean, it was a 1-1 draw against Aston Villa, but we played really, really, really well. And I feel so vindicated for complaining about everyone whinging so much after the Palace game. It's really nice to see West Ham playing at a decent level again and being competitive in games and doing it without feeling that we've been really, really fortunate or that we've got the rub of the green in different moments. We look like we can be a good competitive side in the sort of, outside of the relegation battle, more towards the middle of the table again in the Premier League based on performances like this. And that's just such a relief given what the season has been like up until this point, right?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I think we were both kind of looking forward to this game, but with slight apprehension given how many players were unavailable, whether or not we'd have to rely on youth, given that Villa Park is Villa Park and Villa are Villa. And all of that considered, the performance level that we put in, especially from about the 15th minute onwards, was fantastic, really. So, yeah, very pleased with how we played and very excited about how we could play once all of our big players return and we've got a bit more depth and a bit more quality, I guess. It's harsh to say after a game where everyone actually played pretty well, but Todibo at right centre-back versus Vladimir Coufal is, I think, unquestionably quite a different level.
Yeah, I think so far, given the conditions, playing in a centre-back position, which is not really his game, not something that he's done too much previously. I mean, he's done it a little bit this season, but he doesn't have masses of experience in like a back catalogue to fall back on for playing that role. Also, in terms of his traits, I mean, he's always been quite an attacking fullback. So to go back to playing as part of a back three and being more of a central defender is a big shift in expectation and in responsibility for him. And I've been massively impressed with how he's handled that. I think, obviously, you see some of the inexperience in the role, which happens with Villa's first goal. I think he's slightly unfortunate in that situation, but you feel that Jacob Ramsey probably shouldn't have quite so much space to attack between the wing back and the wide centre back. In that situation, he should maybe get across just a beat earlier. I think possibly slightly unfortunate. Just his body slows up and he has to stop his momentum at the exact moment before the pass is played, and then it's difficult to kind of regain the acceleration in time to cover it. And it's a fantastic finish, we should say, by Ramsey. But apart from that moment, he had a couple of other scary situations in the game, but generally did very well. And I think some of his headers out the box were really important. Some of his work in possession was surprisingly excellent, and that's been something that's been a major area of improvement for him on an individual level. More recently and more generally, I think, someone that used to whack the ball up the line a lot and kind of play quite a lot of hopeful passes forward when placed under pressure. I think he's done incredibly well with a whole different set of responsibilities, different angles, and stuff playing at centre back. And I think, he's done remarkably well. Given that, we'll talk more about him in Extra Time, though, which obviously is the second half of the show on Patreon, where we do individual performances and everything else that doesn't make the main show, because there's so much to go through each week, and we could natter on for hours, and we try and keep it limited to just the 45, or sometimes extend to an hour if we're really indulging ourselves. And where do we start today? I mean, there's so many things to talk about. I think the best place to start is with an individual performance that we're going to go over in brief, which was Paquetá playing as a number 9 for the team. We had Kudus there in the game previous with Paquetá shifted wide. I think that was partly because of his legs and the energy that had gone into the two previous games, and the fact that he didn't have the ability to kind of lead the press in the way that he had done in those games against Villa and in the Cup and against Fulham, and this game back up front. And we've been somewhat starved of having a player that can press intelligently and aggressively and also hold the ball up and link with teammates as a 9. Certainly this season, given the amount of injuries that we've had in that position. And it was like a whole new world, wasn't it? Seeing someone doing the job so well.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I don't want to say we've been banging that drum, but we've been banging that drum.
We have
suggested Paquetá false 9 for so long, pretty much since Lopetegui arrived, because whilst Potter wants his striker to do slightly different things to Lopetegui, I don't think it's drastically different. I think they both want a holder that has good sort of back-to-goal hold-up play, good touch around the box, good combination play with his wingers or 10s, whichever the system dictates. And as you said, the out of possession stuff, I don't think really there's a better presser or more intelligent presser than Paquetá in this whole squad. Soler, maybe you would enter into that conversation, but I think Paquetá probably nudges it for me. And I think when you combine that with all of the in possession link up stuff that you want a false nine to do, I think it made so much sense on paper, and to see it play out in real life to this level was just incredibly impressive and really sort of reassuring, pleasing, just generally nice to see for a player that's come under a lot of flack, who's not been at his best, who lots of players were willing to write off. Lots of players are saying we should have sold him in the summer or in January if we could get the money for him, let him go back to Brazil. And I think he showed today the level that he can perform at, and that we hope he continues to perform at. But also I think you have to give a lot of credit to Potter, because I think if you listen closely to him in his post-match or in a lot of the pre-match stuff, lots of questions about Paquetá, and the one thing he said is that he will play at this level if he feels valued. And I think that probably shows what an impact Potter and his coaching staff have been able to have on him as a player, but also as an individual since arriving at the club, and to make him feel almost in that sort of Bruno Fernandes role, right? Like where he is the centerpiece, the leader of this team, and give him all that responsibility, and he will take it on. And if that's what it takes to unlock him, then so be it, because I'm so here for it moving forward.
But it's guided and grounded responsibility, and I think that's the most important thing. I think we saw him given a huge amount of responsibility under Lopetegui, but it wasn't particularly guided. It wasn't particularly structured. It wasn't necessarily best suited for his qualities. And I think now what we see is something that's better suited to what he does as a player, and something that's a lot more structured in terms of what's being asked of him. And I think sometimes we think of these things as incredibly complicated to explain or deliver to players. And actually, when Paquetá spoke after the game, you get a sense of actually how simple it is. He was asked what Potter has told him when playing up front. He just said, well, look, come short, don't go in behind. I've not really got the qualities to go in behind. If I come short, I can link that very well. And the way that I play in midfield, I play the same way anywhere. Anyway, I want to hold the ball up, and effectively, therefore, you can kind of extrapolate that and say he wants to create space for teammates. That's his game. He wants to get his body in between the ball and the marker, draw pressure, and then roll off that pressure and create opportunities to attack from that. And I think those are useful qualities in midfield, but they are risky qualities in midfield where you can be
stripped of possession quite easily.
Stripped of possession in bad areas for the team, but high up the pitch, either as a winger or as a number 9. They're great qualities. That's exactly what you want your 9 to do, or a winger coming inside and then looking to combine with other players. You want him to be able to do the same kind of stuff. And I think he did it to really, really high level at points in the game, really high level. Very impressive individual performance from him, and good to see something we've spoken about a lot since Potter came in, happier players and players in better suited roles that allow them to perform at better levels.
And I think what was just the final thing that was really pleasing was that we were all in awe and gushing with our praise of Paquetá after the game. And I think one of the best things for me was that in his post-match, he spoke really well, I thought, for someone who has often suggested that he has a terrible grasp of the English language. I thought that was really nice to see anyway. Like, him actually doing the media stuff, again, shows this sort of leadership role that he wants to take on under Potter. But also, he's clearly got the bit between his teeth. The one thing he said was, well, I wasn't good enough, I didn't score, and that's my job as a 9, is to score. And he had chances to score and he didn't put them away. And I think for any of the suggestions previously that his head wasn't in it or his heart wasn't in it, he didn't really want to be here, he was looking for moves away from the club, so reassuring to hear that he's holding himself to a higher level than any of us even are. Because I think we would have all been like, you know what, great performance, more than happy with that. And the fact that he's saying no, I can do better and I want to do better for this club is great. And I think some conversations probably to be had about whether I mean, it's a small sample size, right, but for what you want from a false 9, he's got it all. And I think yes, there is that scary question mark about, well, Graham Potter's strikers never score goals, but Graham Potter's never had Kudus and Bowen as the options to flank the false 9. And I think you can allow your false 9 not to be prolific if they can reliably provide space and killer balls for 2 of the most prolific wingers in the league on their day.
you also need to be able to reliably create space between the lines for that kind of player to thrive, and that won't be the same in every game. It's different for different teams, and I think we were much more able to do that against a depleted Villa side than we maybe will be able to do it in different conditions. With Kamara and Tielemans in there, it's a bit easier to drop the ball over the midfield and in front of the back line, whereas if an Amadou Onana is in there for this kind of game, I think it's harder to access those spaces. The speed at which the midfielders arrive to press from the other side, the number 9 is much greater, and therefore all the stuff that Paquetá did really well in the game would be much less possible. And that's where you need your more physical presence, someone that can, under that kind of pressure, still hold the ball up, still win a free kick for the team. And he did it very well in these circumstances. He's shown previous as well that he can do this job for the team, and I'm glad that we're seeing him do this job for the team when players are out. Like, ultimately, I think if we don't have a fit number 9, I think Paquetá should be the 9 in pretty much any game, because I think he's by far the best option that we have. That's the main takeaway for me. Not so much that it's necessarily a long-term solution for him, although we'll see, right? Like, I think things will look different generally under Potter, and we may see some things work slightly better than they have done before, and this might be one of those that works slightly better under the new manager than under previous managers. There are a couple of things that we need to rattle through really quickly, because we've spent actually quite a long time talking about Paquetá, and he deserved that, so I'm kind of glad that we did, because it was an excellent individual performance. In the context of the match, and we'll just rattle through this first half, I think that we had a difficult first 10. That's absolutely the case, and Villa probably could have scored more in that opening 10. They were very, very impressive at the beginning of the match, and I think we just struggled to deal with the situations that we found ourselves in. I think it was a little bit of chaos at the start of the match, and we didn't particularly enjoy those conditions. I think in the wide centre-back positions as well, it took a little while for Cresswell and Sofal to find that some comfortability, some confidence in the game. Eventually we did find that, and I think we were really impressive from that point onwards. And I think you can look at the whole first half and say maybe it's the whole first half. I actually think, having watched the game back twice, I think really it's 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes of the game, we were under the cosh. After that point, I think we were the better side for almost the rest of the game. We had a slightly dodgy period midway through the second half, and scored at the perfect moment, because it was right at the moment that Villa were just about getting some kind of momentum or control back in the game. Aside from that, I think we were really impressive. One thing that did massively help us, we can't ignore it, Tyrone Mings going off injured and Luca Dean playing at centre-back. We've spoken just then about how well Sofal did, different angles, different responsibility in build-up playing as a centre-back. Luca Dean doing the same kind of job, obviously in a 4, so it is a bit different. He looked lost, didn't he? He looked totally lost.
He struggled. Do you know what was bizarre? Was that, and I think maybe Carragher or Redknapp, one of them might have mentioned this afterwards, but my assumption when Mings went off, given how physical he is, aerially dominant, very good on the deck, and then Digne obviously much smaller and much less physical, I assumed it would be a significant drop-off defensively, and that the in-possession stuff would have been quite good, because Digne's got a really good left foot, just like Mings, but it was the complete opposite. I think actually Digne did a fairly admirable job of the physical stuff, of winning aerial duels, making sure that he was arriving to contest balls that were played in, pressing out at the right time. But it was the in-possession stuff. The amount of times where he left it short for Martinez, who, thankfully, because of how composed he is under pressure, was able to do little fake passes and ride the press quite well. But yeah, hairy in possession performance, and I guess it comes with just the sort of just being in that unnatural position, passing angles that he's almost become a second nature for him and no longer available, but he's probably still hardwired to play those balls, and therefore it puts his teammates under immense amounts of pressure. But
it's also just, hang on, I can get pressed from both sides here. This is a bit scary.
I don't have the touchline as my guardian. Yeah,
precisely, right. I think that was mainly what we saw happening, is like situations where his awareness of the fact that Paquetá could come from one side of him and Kudus could come in from the other side of him just made him feel really nervous on the ball, and I think that really limited the confidence with which he was able to take decisions on the ball. The first thing he did was fire the ball back into Martinez completely unnecessarily, and we almost won the ball in the box off the back of it. So yeah, could really see how much he was struggling. I think also the fact, when you look across the game, it's one shot on target for Villa in the second half. There's no really big chances in the entire match for Villa. They have the free header-ish for Watkins, which we can defend better for sure, but I actually think it's a really, really great set piece routine. And Villa were incredibly aggressive, by the way, with blockers, really, really aggressive with blockers. And I think, again, when I look at some of the blocking routines taking place across the league, I think when you see blocking like this, I plea really to referees, can we pick up on this and stop some of this? Because I think outside of the box blocking should just be a foul. So, for example, I think it's okay to have, defenders have blockers and attackers to have blockers when you're sending balls into the box. I don't have such a big problem with that. But when you've got someone coming short to a corner or coming short for a set piece, and you take a short one, and then the player that's taken the set piece just runs directly at the person who's trying to close the ball down and pushes them backwards, for me, that is just a foul if that's happening outside the box. And I think that should be something that's picked up on, because Villa ran that 5 or 6 times in the game and managed to get crosses into the box that were impossible for us to close down, because they were just pushing players away from the ball to stop them from being able to close the ball down. And the Watkins chance is great blocking inside the box. All 4 players for Villa go beyond the ball, force all of and just stand in front of our players to stop them from being able to come out to the ball. Wan-Bissaka, who's Watkins' man-to-man marker, is blocked as well, which creates the free header. Apart from that, there isn't really a big opportunity for Villa in the game, and that is partly because of one player that we're going to come on to talk about afterwards. So a really impressive defensive performance. I mean, lots of things that went well for us going forward, a lot to do with the work that Lucas Paquetá gave us at the top of the pitch, and other stuff that, again, we're going to come on to later in the pod. But the defensive stuff is just so massively improved from where we were under Lopetegui, and ultimately the key thing to address, right? Like the last season under Moyes, the biggest problem for us was that defensively we weren't solid enough, we weren't good enough, we weren't limiting chance quality enough for a side that had always conceded lots of shots, and you expect that under David Moyes. We just weren't stopping the quality of those shots in the way that we had done previously, and then it became shots and high quality of chances in abundance under Lopetegui. It was almost worse than it was under Moyes, and that's gone completely, almost immediately with Potter through the door, which is a massive thing to achieve in 2.5 weeks or so that he's been here. I think we look back at the Palace game, and I think you have to look at that in context and say that the attack was the most dysfunctional thing there. We conceded 1 chance before the point that we were chasing the match, maybe 2 chances. And this game, it's again kind of 1-2 chances. And that's kind of a good rate, I think, for Premier League. Teams are good in this division, and they're going to create half openings against you. And ultimately, Mathiasen and Ramsey have pocketed 2 okay chances, but not really massive chances in these 2 games. And actually beyond that, apart from the penalty, we haven't really conceded across the 2 games any gilt edge chances, which is a nice thing to say from these 2 games with so many players out as well. It's a really nice thing to say about the way that we're performing. Couple of final points to pick up on here, and I am rattling through, so I apologise, because there's lots of stuff for us to get through on the plan today. So many things we do want to talk about. I'll come to you on this. Lineup before the game, obviously, and we see the result that we get, which is great. All of the senior players in. Little bit of a disappointment, maybe, that we didn't see at least one of Scholes, Orford, and Casey included from the start, because I think it was a good opportunity, right, to get at least one of them on the pitch with so many injuries.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's difficult, isn't it, looking at it now in hindsight with the result in the bag, basically, and I can kind of see. I can see the reasons behind a lot of it. I think with Casey, and again, we're going to come on to talk about a certain central centre-back who had a brilliant game. I think the benefit of having a left footer on that left side cannot be understated, and I think that's why Cresswell kind of had to play there, because if you introduce Casey, you've got another right footer and you're trying to find a place. Do you put him in central centre-back, which is... talk about a baptism of fire against this Villa side? Then do you play him at left centre back instead when he's on his weak foot and the whole build up and passing angles are completely different? And do you play him at right centre back when you want someone that's going to overlap and get involved with Wan-Bissaka, when you could have Coufal doing that, who did a great job? So that's difficult. I think Orford probably is the one where maybe you're thinking, okay, would there have been that much of a drop-off? But then again, I think the midfield did maybe the best midfield shift we've seen under Potter since he's arrived. And then again, Emerson at left wing-back. Maybe this is the one where I think Scholes probably could have done as good a job. I know it's difficult to say, because Emerson does obviously get the goal and he did quite a good job of getting in the box. But I think Scholes probably could have done and arrived in all the positions that Emerson did anyway. I don't think it's necessarily a product of Emerson's amazing ability to read attacking movements and arrive at the exact perfect moment. I think it's a systemic thing that Ollie Scholes will have been doing on the training pitch just as much as Emerson will have been doing in the run-up to this game. So I think that's probably the one where I would most have been comfortable with making that change. But as I said at the start, it's very difficult to say this in hindsight because Emerson's your goal scorer and Cresswell's the only left footer in the back line. So
yeah, I think perfectly understandable the decisions that were taken. I think in terms of a point at Villa Park, it's really good for the context of our season.
Yeah.
I think for the future of the club, getting opportunities that aren't going to come all that often to assess these players when you have so many injuries, I think you have to try and take those where possible, just to get a sense of, yeah, it's a risk. And yes, a Lewis Orford coming in for a game like this or a Caelan Casey coming in for a game like this could sink and we could not get the result that we want from the game. But I think that experience is so valuable and you're not going to get, like I say, many opportunities to give them that kind of experience because there's, in most cases, if you're going to be bringing them in, you're going to be dropping a senior player to bring them in. Whereas in this case, particularly with Casey, that wasn't the case. He was the only fit actual centre-back to play alongside Maximilian Kilman here. But that's, again, nothing to do with the game plan or the execution of it or how well we played and all that stuff. It's just about, long-term planning. If you're one of those players and you don't get in at that moment, you might start thinking, well, when am I ever going to get in? And is this the right place for me? I don't really want that for our academy at the moment because I think there are lots of good players there that we want them to be feeling like they're going to be able to break through. It was good that Scholes got on in the second half and showed again just how good he was. I mean, really important that at least one of them came off the bench, right? And Scholes came off the bench again and did a very, very good job.
Unlucky not to create a really good chance for Paquetá. That's what I was going to say. That cross from deep out wide to spot that movement was... Whew.
Yeah, and his anticipation defensively is he seems to have across all of his games. Like sometimes it goes wrong for him, but he seems to have this real confidence about. The ball is going to go there, and I'm going now because I can make an interception or I can make an early tackle and get us moving and going forward. I quite like that to have that confidence at his age to and the conviction of like I know I can read the game well enough to know that's where the pass is going and I'm going to go now. I love that. I think that's a really good trait to have at a young age. Cool, we've gone over. So we're going to move on to the to the middle of the pod. So in the top section, we spoke about how difficult the first 10 minutes was, but then 10 minutes were, sorry, and how good we were afterwards. I think one of the big changes from the second half onwards and why we were so much better really in the second half as a whole than we were in the first half was just how aggressive we were with the wing backs. And we've often been caught talking about, we've often talked about Wan-Bissaka, Coufal, Cresswell and Emerson as a cast of fullbacks that none of them really work particularly well as wing backs. And I think some good answers given here by some of these players, really good level of aggression, really good level of commitment going forward, some good quality as well in the final third from all of these players. Coufal and Cresswell both also overlapping at times from the wide centre-back positions and providing quality in the final third. Coufal whipped one outrageously good ball into the back post, which we know he can do. His crossing quality is really, really high, especially if he's given space and is unopposed to cross balls into the box. He's very, very good first time in those situations. I also think it's worth talking about here the difference in expectations under Potter for the wing backs and actually how some slight changes in how the wing backs are used as attacking tools for the team is also enabling them to perform at a much better level as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think across the board, all of the performance levels have been super impressive, obviously. But I think if there was one area that you would want to maybe highlight, and again, it's a small sample size for anyone to have really seen a massive improvement. But I think that's probably why it's so impressive, considering where, I don't want to say where the floor was, but I guess where the floor was then and now where the floor is now, but also where the ceiling seems to be as well, with a bit of foresight.
I think this metaphor, the floor and ceiling thing. It's so easy to get confused.
Yeah, I was literally tripping myself up there. I was like some sort of architect trying to design a house. But yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we're probably going to talk about very regularly and something that, we have already talked about, I feel like, quite a lot. But yeah, I think in terms of I guess for me as well, something that we said that we wanted to see when Potter came in was to raise the value of players as well. And I think by sort of coming in and targeting the maybe most problematic position for us prior to his arrival and already managing to uplift them to a level that perhaps with some of the players we didn't even think necessarily was possible based on what we'd seen at the start of this season has been really pleasing and something I anticipate will continue because it seems to be baked into the system.
Yeah, I think to clarify what I see those differences are, I think under Lopetegui, our wing backs were generally used really at the sharp end of everything, and we were looking to them to kind of be the players that assisted goals. Ultimately, receiving really high up the pitch, making runs, late runs, aggressive runs, and then receiving from players in the centre, trying to force the defence quite narrow, then play out wide, and then have players like Wan-Bissaka and Emerson really zipping balls into the box from wide. And ultimately, I don't see them as those kind of overlapping, like we always describe, Navas style.
Yeah.
Players that have just got this unbelievable turn of speed and then can always pick the right cross in those situations to pick out a teammate. I actually think what we see now, where they're more involved progressively, and maybe as the pass before the assist, and it's more about, can they dribble through pressure, can they combine in the middle third of the pitch, can they retain the ball well, make sure that we don't turn the ball over in those areas. Lots more focus on actually playing through the wide areas and using them deeper in the pitch to help us build up, and then them being again useful in the final third, and lots of crosses, particularly from Wan-Bissaka in the game, but so much better assisted by, wide centre-back's gone and gone beyond, Sofao's gone beyond. There's always kind of runners with them in the wide areas to make sure that if they're going to be the player that cross, they have a bit of extra space to get a ball into the box, or they don't actually always have to be the player that delivers the ball themselves because there are runners around them. There are other options to pass to. It's not quite so simple as like, bam, everyone's hit the box and it goes wide to you and you've got to find a target in the penalty area. I just think that is, particularly for Wan-Bissaka, more so than anyone, just so much better suited to his qualities. And we saw in this game, like his progressive work in deep areas for the team, his dribbling for the team, then what he does in
was insane.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just think the role, although they're still really important offensive players for Potter as they were for Lopetegui, I just think the things that they're being asked to do and the situations from which they're being asked to contribute in the final third are so much better suited to the qualities that we have in those positions, which again mirrors what we're talking about up front. It mirrors what we're now going to talk about in defence. It mirrors what we're seeing maybe in midfield as well. It mirrors what we're seeing in the number 10. Like, that is a team-wide thing that Potter's been able to achieve so quickly. Yeah.
I think that's what it is. It feels we've gone from a system that was very much dependent on a small number of individuals to create, to score, to do the team, and then it felt like 4 or 5 positions were kind of just filled, and then they just had to serve a very functional role. Whereas I think this new system under Potter, and it probably has a knock-on effect into why we've seen the sort of energy levels, commitment levels, whatever you want to call them, uptick as well, because I think there just seems to be a very clear understanding that every single player has a function to play and the system only works in combination with one another. So it's not just, okay, my wing-backs are going to be central to the system and therefore they need to go and be really, really good, and if they're not, then the system's shit. It's, okay, I will still want my wing-backs to do a really important role, but for them to be able to do that, I need to create an environment where the 10 on their side is going to come in and offer support, or as you say, the wide centre-back, or they're going to be allowed the licence to bomb all the way to the byline because the holding midfielder is capable of then covering that space, rather than having both holding midfielders absolutely bomb forward on every occasion and leave gaping holes. It's kind of, it seems so basic to say when discussing a football manager and how they've sort of planned their tactics, because you'd hope that every football manager would think this, but at times it didn't feel like Lopetegui was. But every single piece is connected. It's like, okay, well, the most attacking moment when we're right at the byline ready to put a ball into the box is directly, there's a line drawn very clearly all the way back to our rest defence, and those things are always going to be interconnected to create that sort of stable platform on which the ceiling, to bring it back, can be raised. Whereas before, there wasn't even any foundations for the building to be built on, it felt like at times.
I think that spread of responsibility is really great for the team as well, because you can see that, players thrive off of understanding their importance to the team and understanding how they can make a positive impact for the team, and also being grounded in situations where they're able to provide positives and support for the team. So I think I think it's really, really, really good across the board. And I would talk about it more in terms of kind of, I think Lopetegui was a classic example of, frankly, managers who often approach things with imposition of system as the kind of top line of what happens. And I think Potter, he's definitely imposing a style. He's definitely imposing a set of ideas, and that's great. Like, you need a manager to do that, but there's a relationship between that style and those ideas and the players at his disposal, rather than, there's what it looks like on a tack board, and you're going to play there because you're a right back, and you're going to play there and do that because you're a midfielder. And it's like, well, but I don't have any of those technical qualities that you need from a player in that position, and you're going to put me in all these situations that highlight things that I'm not good at. And that's not what we're seeing under Potter at all. There's a flexibility and adaptability to what the players can do that enables the players to perform better, and that works in tandem with a similar level of flexibility and adaptability to what the opposition is bad at, which helps us to be effective in kind of all of our games. It means that I think we'll find less situations where, under both the previous managers, we had matchups where we were so markedly uncompetitive, if that makes sense, because like our system just doesn't work against these guys, if you know what I mean. Like early Moyes against Brighton was a kind of a good example of like, this just doesn't work against this opposition, but we're still going to run into the same problems against this team because this is how we play. And I think it's not that Potter doesn't have a way of playing, but Potter is able to adapt in those situations to say, okay, we need to change these, the emphasis here. We need to maybe change these couple of players. We need to move these, some of the responsibilities in the team around a little bit. And actually we're able to be more effective against this opposition as well by making a couple of changes. And I think it's actually really important to have that level of flexibility for us at the moment, because I think given the amount of churn that's going to be happening in the squad and what's kind of been going wrong over the last few years, where we're trying to find the right options to kind of progress us from a physical, low block and counter-attack built squad to something that can be a little bit more than that. There are going to be times where we don't have all the right pieces. There are going to be lots of situations. This season is a perfect example. We don't really have all the right pieces to be exactly the team we want. So having that level of adaptability is going to help us to be competitive in the interim whilst we're building all of those layers.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think one of the most pleasing things that I read coming out of it, coming out of this game, I should say, was Alvarez's comments, actually, post-match, where he said he'd been surprised, which I thought was quite a funny choice of word, but I guess completely fair, but surprised by sort of what Potter's come in and done tactically and sort of what he's been discussing. And I think the most important point that I took out of it was when he discussed that Potter had told everyone about his ideas, but then Alvarez himself acknowledged that, however, we can't do all of them straight away, and we've been told that we're going to do it step by step. Whereas I think Lopetegui clearly came in and went, here's my idea, and in the first game, if you don't do it perfectly, I'm going to be fuming. Whereas I think Potter's come in and gone, okay, look, here's the end goal. This is how I'd like us to perform. But if we all sit down and just zoom out a sec and realise that we've got about 6 players injured, and you've been playing in this distinct way, very distinct way, actually, Lopetegui, and this is where I want to get us, we can't just leap from A to B. We need to go through A1, A2, A3 before we get to B. Whereas I think, as I say, Lopetegui came in, again, he's gone from Moyes' style straight to his style and gone, whoop, no interim, no, do this right now. And it didn't work. And I think that's really pleasing that not only has Potter come in to do that, but the players clearly have been told that, understand that, and buy into that it's not going to just be a boom straight to there now. It's a almost more confusing in the sense that I think Lopetegui wanted to introduce that level of kind of like flexibility to try and arrive somewhere in between, but it wasn't built off of what you actually have and how it works on the pitch and how successful it is for the players and how well the players understand it. It was kind of like an almost dogmatic assumption of what would be the middle ground. It was like he'd written here are the 4 stages of this ideology. Stage 1, this. Stage 2, now we put this into it. And stage 2, and it was like, like you said, it wasn't just as simple as here's one idea and we're going to go there. It was like, here's the idea and here's the exact way that I've worked out that we're going to get there. and we're going to take each of these steps each time without going, okay, here's the idea, and actually I don't have a right back this week, so maybe we'll just pause for a sec and we'll go a little bit slower to step 2. It was very much like, boom, by this week I want to do this. By this week I'm going to change to this. It was like, yeah, just...
Yeah, do you know, in some ways I disagree, because I think I see what you're saying, but I think not even. It was just kind of like adapting what he had done previously to this idea of greater directness, to like utilize players like Thomas Souček to be able to be like more direct focused in some of our play as well. And I think more for me, it was kind of like, yeah, because this isn't, I don't want this to sound like some sort of big criticism of him as a manager. Ultimately, it didn't really work at West Ham, and I think we can all see that and be comfortable saying that. But I think, you know, some of the quality of some of the ideas there and the motivation behind some of the ideas are all like perfectly fine. I completely understand what leads you to where we were, which was kind of a bit of a haphazard mix of being a team that has a bit of a slower tempo build up and a team that can be direct too. And I think what we were direct in some of the wrong ways. I think that's ultimately the problem, is we weren't direct in the way that we've been able to be under Potter, where we utilize our counter-attacking threat. We were more direct in the sense that, like, oh, we have Thomas Souček, and when we need to, we can just like lump it long to him, and that will get us to the final third. I think it was a bit of a misunderstanding over what directness can be for our group. Yeah. And I think it's kind of a case where a lot of the ideas made really good sense on paper, but when it came to actually building the thing and you hit test, you know, it just kind of fell apart and just turned into sludge. And there wasn't really a clear idea for, oh, what do we do now? Because this hasn't worked. It was kind of just a lot of chopping and changing, but kind of ultimately banging your head against the wall with the same principles, even though you try different shapes and try different ways of achieving the same conclusions. We can't get stuck on this, and I want to move on. Ultimately, the thing we're really landing on as a team here, not just you and I, but also Darcy and all the work that we're doing behind the scenes, is that the adaptability is having a really massive positive impact on the group, and is enabling the group to perform at a much greater level. And now we see something that's built more in tune with actually what directness can mean for this group, actually what, you know, Wan-Bissaka can offer as a player, what Lucas Paquetá can offer as a player, and built more around genuinely the things that they're good at, rather than maybe a slightly crude understanding of the players themselves. Like, it felt very much sort of, you know, Paquetá, well, he progresses the ball, so we'll just put him in the middle and he'll be the progressive of the team. Yeah. Wan-Bissaka, well, I need a Navas on this side, so you're going to be Navas, even though that might not work for you. And Souček, you're a big lump, so in the box you go. Yeah. You know, it's a little bit... Yeah, you know, there's a little bit more understanding, I think, more full understanding of actually what the players can do under the new manager. I was going to say none more so, but there's so many examples and we've gone through them. But like even Souček in this game, playing deep, spreading the ball, showing his quality with his long passing range, something that's been underappreciated for a crazy long time. Like, his short stuff is not actually the best in the universe. His progressive and line breaking stuff is not the best in the universe. His long passing is really good, and has been really good for quite a while at West Ham. So to use his range deeper to spread the play while you're using wing backs, that's actually a really, really good idea, and works really well. And one of the reasons actually why we stretched them well in the second half is Souček sitting in that deeper role and just whipping the ball side to side across the defence and causing Villa loads of problems, because they're sitting in that kind of... Villa defend slightly passively in the 4-4-2. And if you're playing with a 3 with wing backs, it's going to be really tough, because it's got to shift side to side really aggressively. If someone's constantly going counterflow, bang, out to the other side, what are you going to do with that now? So I thought that was great. The player that we want to land on and talk about, though, is central centre-back in this game, Max Kilman. I think his performance, which we won't go into too much depth on, I think we should more talk about him and his profile and how it worked with the role, because I want to really talk about him on ET, and I think Darcy's got a lot of stuff that he wants to talk about with Kilman for ET as well. I don't want us to nick his whole flow, everything he's been working on today. But I think his performance level this season, and it's been funny this week, because I think, you know, I posted on Twitter after the game, I think worth every penny or something like that, and I got some responses that were a little bit, you know, people thinking that he maybe hasn't played quite so well this season. We conceded lots of goals. He's been obviously in the defence, and has he been a really big part of the reason why the defence has not been, you know, keeping clean sheets and so on and so forth. Ultimately, my opinion on that is I think if Kilman hadn't performed to the level that he had done, I think we would have broken some kind of record for most goals conceded in the first half of the season.
In a relegation scrap for sure.
Yeah, I think ultimately, despite the malaise that we've had as a team defensively, I think he's been outstanding within that. And his profile for the central centre-back role, which we got to see him playing in this game rather than more a wide centre-back position, he's really good for that role. There are lots of things we can talk about. I think the first one to talk about would be his in-possession qualities. And I know you want to talk about how that maps to wide centre-back quite well. And then I think we should contrast that with actually what he does without the ball and how maybe that maps slightly better to the centre of the three.
Yeah. So I think it was always the big debate, right, when Potter came in. Does he play the wide centre-back role a la Dan Burn before he went to Newcastle, or does he play the central centre-back role a la Lewis Dunk? And I think the answer is he could do both. And I think I thought because of sort of the profiles that we potentially would play at left-back or left wing-back, given the squad's makeup currently, that he would be really good for that left centre-back role, primarily because of his ball carrying ability and the ability to progress us when there isn't an obvious pass on. We see it in this game even. There's a moment where he snaps in to intercept a ball that's played slightly loosely, and instead of just sort of stopping and going backwards, he just uses the momentum of him running onto the interception and just goes, sound, I'm just going to carry on going forward as far as I can. And that is a huge skill for any centre-back to have, but obviously it's most commonly seen as a wide centre-back trait, right? It's in sort of in absence
it's
of
outside of the front two of a press, isn't it? Like
exactly.
Ultimately, everyone's pressing with the front two. So if you're the centre back, you can't really do that. You're just going to be running into congested space. Whereas if you can get outside the front two of the press as you can as a wide centre back, then you can run into space and do something useful for the team.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I'll segue into what his strengths are as a centre-back by highlighting, I think, the one probably weakness that he has as a wide centre-back that maybe is why it makes more sense for him to go into the middle. And that is that whilst, yes, his in-possession stuff at wide centre-back is really impressive and really beneficial, the thing you want your wide centre-backs to do out of possession, something that Mavropanos does definitely willingly, sometimes erratically.
Willingly is definitely the right word. He did it very well at Stuttgart.
Yeah. Something he definitely can do, but because it's aggressive by nature, does lead to mistakes with some sort of bad timing errors. But yeah, you want your wide centre-backs to press very aggressively and step up, and sort of that even comes when the wingers press. You want them to go and join and latch onto the next player, and something we didn't see a lot of under Lopetegui, but we wanted to see more of, and certainly that we expect to see more of under Graham Potter. But it's
we
just
saw it in this game, just for a clear example, like we pressed really well as a team in settled play in this game, and it's when Kudus goes to the centre back, then Wan-Bissaka has to detach and go out to the fullback, so he actually kind of becomes a winger for us out of possession when we're in our pressing structure. It immediately jumps from like a back five into a back four with Wan-Bissaka going so high, and then at that point one or both of your wide centre backs have to go and lock on now to the number 10s or the wingers to help support the press. So we all go up as a team and press really aggressively. And really, typically, it would be your ball side centre back. So you'd have Kudus go out, Wan-Bissaka goes up one, and then Coufal also, if he's playing as the white centre back, has to go up one. And it doesn't matter, the same maps onto Mavropanos or whoever the right centre back is going to have to do that same really aggressive shift. Works exactly the same on the left side when you press as a unit on the left side. And those probably are the moments where we've seen Kilman struggle most, is when he's got to then make that jump and be really aggressive as a defender. It's kind of contra.
It's just not in his nature,
it's kind of contra to what he likes to do, which is more the mopping up behind the defense. He's better at kind of anticipating, the ball's going to come through here. And we see it in this game, like this tackle, I think is Watkins that's about to run through very early in the match, and he just sees it before it's even happened and is already sprinting across and makes the tackle to stop it. He does it twice more in the game, twice in the second half. I think that's his, as a defender, he's a dual dominator. He's really good in the air. He's really good at defending the box. He's actually really good in the tackle as well. And his biggest quality beyond that is his ability to read the game and to defend space in behind particularly well, which is not to say that he's not a good wide centre-back, because that is a demand of the wide centre-back in rest defence. It's really important to be able to cover space, cover wide space, cover lots of space, and have the pace and athleticism to do it, and he can do that. But I think in settled defence, that central centre-back role where players are being aggressive either side of him, and then he can kind of see, they're going to arrive late, so I need to just start running in that direction. is where we see like his qualities really maximized. And it has really big knock-on effects for squad building, I think, because as you said, we thought of him, I think you were right to think of him more as the wide centre-back under Potter, because who do we really have on the left side to play as a kind of narrowing centre-back, apart from Aaron Cresswell, who I know is playing right now, but we wouldn't necessarily expect him to be in the first 11 when everyone in the squad is fit. Like you'd expect him probably to be one of the players that's playing at the moment that would drop out from the first 11. I wonder if a certain someone playing out in La Liga might benefit from this, because we do have a left-footed centre-back that's comfortable at left-back, playing for a team in the Europa League right now, who I read has been one of their better players this season, one of their better defenders this season, if not their best defender this season. Didn't have a good time at West Ham previously, under a completely different manager with completely different demands to the current manager, and someone that may be a surprise return, not this season but next season, as a genuine, serious starter, maybe, or definitely close to the starting 11, to allow Kilman to play that role.
Yeah. I mean,
who are we talking about? It's Knife for Gerd. I didn't say his
name. No one will be surprised to know that I'm in favour of at least giving it a go. I think the biggest question mark will come round to a conversation between Potter and himself as to whether, am I going to be the starting left centre back that tucks in, or am I going to be a squad player? If it's squad player, I think it probably makes sense from a career point of view for him to be like, well, I know I can go and start for most sides in La Liga now, based on the season that I've just had. And then you look to cash in, and this is another example of a very well chosen loan move, I would say, because if he doesn't have a future back at the club, then you can sell him for probably at least a return on our money.
The importance of a good loan, right? It's
exactly
wild. It has a huge difference if you can pick someone who's going to pick up a club where they're going to play pretty much every game. Yeah,
but I think with Potter, it's hopefully, I mean, the way that Todibo's spoken about Potter and how excited he is as a centre-back to come in and play in this system under this new manager, the way that Alvarez as a defensive-minded player has come in and spoken about how this system's really got the best out of him. Attacking players obviously is the case, and you can imagine that Kilman's really relishing the opportunity as well. So I think Potter could quite easily sit down with a Gerd and go, hey, look at how all my previous teams defended. Here is the role for you. It was made for you, really, in terms of what a Gerd's strengths are. It takes him away. Yeah, exactly. It takes him away.
Don't have to be super dual dominant. Has to be really, really good on the ball. Can swing forward and support the attack.
That's exactly it. That's and also, you get a recovery pace that Cresswell does not have, and therefore you can take even more risks, and you can push even higher forward. And you know, a Gerd, if he's got 50 yards to run back, he's going to beat most players there once he hits full stride because of how long his legs are. So I think, it really does make sense within the system. I think ultimately it just comes down to whether he thinks he's going to get enough minutes. But the idea of a Gerd at left centre back with Kilman in the centre and Todibo to the right next season, I'd certainly be willing to give it a go, even if it's just for a few games in pre-season, see how it plays out. And if Potter still thinks the physical lack of physicality, should we say, of a Gerd is too much for the Premier League, then fine, we ship him back out to wherever we'll take him, basically. But with the benefit of the fact that we'll probably be able to command a reasonable fee, because if he maintains the form he's currently playing at, then there's no reason that he shouldn't command one.
Yeah, I think the last thing to talk about with Kilman in possession is we spoke about how much his carrying can be useful as a wide centre-back. His both-footedness in the centre in this game completely killed any attempt to press us, because he can go either side, and because he's good on the dribble. So there's so many situations where he doesn't even have to dribble. He's just like, I can see you coming, and a little touch that way, and I've gone. Goodbye. There's a moment where he popped up in midfield, and I think he dribbled past Watkins, played it left, took the ball back in the centre. He's effectively in midfield at that point, and then just whipped a wonderful diag out to the right hand side. It's like, oh God, this guy just gone off the left to go into midfield, and then has shifted the ball onto his right and whipped it out that side off the other foot. It's like, it's just so difficult to deal with that. At central centre back makes us so good on the ball, and I think Lopetegui was brought in to make us better with the ball, and ultimately, our possession stats didn't really shift too much. We were still sitting around 45% of the ball at the best of times under him, sometimes getting to 50. But that was against teams that were generally really poor against us when we got to those levels or above. Or teams that were just really poor in general, like the Leicester game. I think just Leicester under Van der Stroy in general had a couple of good moments. Haven't been very good. Leicester all season, frankly, haven't been very good. So not a huge achievement to go there and dominate possession. I think we've seen that tick up massively under Potter, and I think in general, there are so many things that have shifted in terms of that improving. But Kilman playing in the centre could be a big part of taking that on a little bit further and helping us to really control and dominate with the ball. The rest defence stuff that Lopetegui was talking about towards the end of his time at West Ham and how much that needed to develop and how much he understood that it needed to develop. Talking about rest defence, defending with the ball and how much he understood that we needed to get better at defending with the ball. That's come on an unbelievable amount under Potter in such a short space of time. It's so good to see that boring stuff that can be difficult to watch, but just knocking it around between the centre backs really slowly until someone jumps out to press, and then knocking the ball past the player that presses, and now you've got a +1, and great, we can play through and arrive in the final third, and we don't have to immediately generate a chance every time we arrive in the final third. Sometimes we can just recycle, go back and keep the ball, because it helps us control the match and control momentum and not really get into situations where teams are just dominating us and peppering our goal, which is gone. Like, that hasn't happened in the last 2 games at all, given even with the number of players that we have out injured. There's other stuff that we want to do and we don't really have any time to do it.
We're back.
Yeah. I think if I'm looking through the stuff that's left on the plan, I think the one thing that we should land on before we head over to ET is probably that for the first time, really, since when did Moyes come back? I mean, even really before then, because I can't really think of a time at West Ham in the time that I've really been properly able to understand kind of what's going on, and basically not being a teenager or 13 or whatever going to games. And even then it was Sam Allardyce. I think the balance at West Ham right now, even in these handful of games, between the two things which have needed to be balanced at the football club for so long, we kind of oscillated between a manager that's going to be really direct with the ball and really passive off the ball, and manager that's going to try and be less direct with the ball and more aggressive off the ball. Just kind of like bounce between these two extremes without ever finding somewhere that's more in the middle, which would finally please the fan base, because that's ultimately, even if it's not been always brilliantly expressed, and we've kind of ended up like talking about quite vague ideas and things like the West Ham way and stuff, and not really being able to fully nail down kind of what the demand is from the fan base. Is it ultimately flatly it's entertainment? But I think, really passive side to side stuff which doesn't actually progress isn't massively entertaining in the same way that super direct and therefore not having much of the ball, because every time you get the ball you're trying to create a shooting opportunity within 4 to 5 passes. Also has periods where if you're not doing that effectively in a game, it's not very entertaining because you're losing the ball and then you're defending for 70-80% of the game around in your own third. I think this is the first time where finally someone's come in and kind of understands what needs to happen, and we finally see a balance between we can be direct, we can go off 9 into Kudus and break and be really dynamic and really difficult to handle, and we can also be a bit more conservative with the ball, be a bit more considered in what we do. There are moves with the ball in this game, which is something that we said after Fulham that I haven't seen at West Ham for as long as I can remember, really.
Yeah.
In an actually built out, understood, not Dimitri Payet dropping into midfield and beating 3 players on his own kind of thing, that are just happening and look good in the second half of the Villa match, and that's a huge. It's so early, and it's got so much scope to improve from here, which is brilliant because the level is already really high. But it's a huge development for actually bringing the club together in a way that it's kind of needed to be brought together for a little while.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think when Potter was announced and we wrote our piece for the club website, I think we finished on the point that maybe this is the perfect appointment to bring the fans, the players, the board, and everyone involved, all the different factions involved together, because I think Potter has shown his willingness to hand certain responsibilities over to other members of staff within the club. I think he's shown his willingness to give an element of freedom within the constructs of a system, but an element of freedom of how you execute that on the pitch in moments. And I think that sort of marriage of, players, here's roughly how I want to play, but I trust you to sort of gauge the temperature of the match and take these moments and know when to slow the rhythm down and know when to play the direct ball if you see that it's on, rather than, I think, again, to loop it back around to the previous managers, as you said, where there's always kind of been a plan A and plan B has always been a little bit nondescript and unclear. Whereas I think now there's several plans, and Potter's clearly already so early on got it across to the players, because he can't be on the touchline every 2 minutes going, okay, right, now we go direct. No, it's all about going, okay, right, Cresswell, if you see that there's space in behind their right back and there's a run being made, I know that we want to keep the ball, but I'm more than happy for you in those moments to just clip it down the line and find that ball when it's on. I'm not going to bake it into the system and try and do it every time.
Yeah, it's not exactly. Yeah. It's that you don't see that happen once and then you go, oh, that worked, we're going to do that.
Yeah,
Loads.
Exactly. So it's giving the players the freedom, basically just the respect, like just saying, you're a footballer that's got to Premier League level. I believe in your ability to spot these moments and do things on your terms. I'll give you the basic blueprint and you go and deliver. I'll give you, it's kind of like on, what's that show? Fucking Great British Bake Off, where they give you half a recipe. They tell you what needs to go into it, but they don't tell you how to do it. So they go, okay, here's the key ingredients for this recipe. Now go and add your own little flair on it, and I'm excited to see what the end product is. And every game is going to come out of a slightly different product, but the general vibe and taste is going to be the same. And I think that's it. It's, as fans, as long as we're getting that general taste of what it is we want to see, how it's cooked up, a little bit of variance, I'm more than happy to embrace, and clearly the players are more than happy to embrace it as well. And I think from a squad point of view, it's really important for us going forward, because we're never going to be able to build the perfect squad because we don't have the money, right? So you need different...
even if we did, we're at the level where if players perform at the level that makes them part of the perfect squad, they're very likely to leave, which is what happened with Declan Rice. And if Kudus... had continued to perform at the level that he did when he first came in, if Paquetá had maintained a level of performance throughout, like ultimately these guys just wouldn't be at West Ham if they were performing consistently at that kind of level. And
I think that's it. It's that variance of putting enough trust in your players, but also enough trust in the system at the exact same time, so that when someone leaves, because the system's made them look really good, you have so many other different little tweaks that you can make that means the system doesn't drop off as soon as Rice goes, which kind of happened at West Ham, right? The drop-off was crazy. Whereas now, I think, and Brighton's the perfect case study, think of how many players left, but they've been able to maintain and improve on that level. Obviously, not just under Potter, but certainly when he was there and then beyond. And yeah, I think ultimately that's it. It's that adaptability, that flexibility, and the sort of confidence that they are Premier League players, and therefore I trust you to go out and do it, and I'm not just going to sit here and berate you if you make a mistake. I'm going to encourage you to try and take those risks game in, game out, because your understanding will increase and then the system will become more effective. So yeah, ultimately it's a really positive time, really, in case you couldn't tell, in case you've not enjoyed listening to this for an hour about how gassed we are. But yeah, it just seems to all kind of be clicking, and I know it's early days, but there's just things you can see where I go, okay, long term I can really see how this works.
Exactly. I think it's lovely to do a podcast like this and be able to say that, looking to the future, of course there's always a level of uncertainty, but I feel confident about the place that we're in and that we're moving in a clear and good direction, and that what we might have to suffer in the interim might actually not be too bad, because with the amount of players that we have out, the level that we've hit is really quite remarkable from where we were. We've improved so much as a football team in 2.5 weeks, that I'm quite excited to see what happens after 2.5 months when players come back, after 6 months when transfers have been made, when things look a little bit different, I think there's a really good platform here to go forward and be the football club that we all hope that we can be, and all believe that we can be. So thank you, Cal. Join us over on Extra Time. We're heading over to Patreon. We're going to talk about Kilman's performance in more depth. We're going to talk about Edson Alvarez. I'm going to talk about Thomas Souček, and
Really?
and we're also going to talk about you would never have seen that one coming. Emerson Kudus. I think there's a couple of things about crossing that we want to look at, and the different situations in attack that are generated, and how actually the crosses that we're putting in at the moment look really good, and then also some situations with regards to attacking against a 4-4-2, some tactical bits about creating the right kind of space to generate bigger chances, and actually that bigger chances might be on their way. We're starting to see some bigger chances coming in the final third, which is another massive development for the team. So if you want to hear about all that stuff, head over to patreon.com/Analytics United. Thank you so much to everyone who's signed up recently. We have more transfers videos coming. If you haven't seen all of those, they are available on YouTube. We have been doing some really fun videos looking at players to sign for West Ham. We've got another one coming up before the end of the January transfer window, or just about the end of the January transfer window. And then we'll be doing a couple more over the course of the rest of the season, just dotted throughout. And if you want to be able to vote on which positions you want us to do, if you want to be able to vote for, tell us about the exciting under-21s that West Ham should sign, or whatever, if you want to be able to choose the options.
I'll jump on that one.
For exactly. For what comes out, then Patreon is the place to be for all of that, and all additional as well. We did a wonderful podcast special on there in the midweek with Charlie Benny, who was brilliant, talking about Brighton under Potter and the things that we should expect to see, and so on and so forth. So head over there. First 7 days free. We'd love to see you there. And until next week, it's goodbye from us.
And come on, you Irons.